silver, and he was rich in gold. Today we want to look at Matthew 25. Matthew 25. Matthew 25. And today we want to talk about don't rob yourself of financial increase. Don't rob yourself of financial increase. Look at somebody's feet. Tell them don't shoot yourself in the foot. You sit next to somebody, just kick their legs. Say, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't shoot yourself. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Since we can't touch hands and all, we got to come up with some kind of way that we can do some touching in this doggone. Matthew chapter 25. Matthew chapter 25. I trust you got an outline when you came in on today. And we want to look at don't rob yourself of financial increase. When you hear that title, what comes to mind to you? When you hear that title, what comes to mind? What comes to mind? Don't rob God. Okay, don't rob God. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. I like that. Anybody else? Don't cheat yourself. Don't cheat yourself. Okay. What about over here on the slow side? Y'all got anything over here? Y'all, slow side used to be over there in 2019, but it didn't shift over here in 2020. Amen. They plenty over there. Don't sell yourself short. Okay, Ray, what you was going to say? You have some control over your financial situation. All right. Sounds like a CFO of a church, doesn't it? Amen. That's our CFO of our church. Amen. I don't know if he's trying to send a subtle message to me or what. Amen. Okay. All right. Yes. Go ahead, Marvin. Don't be afraid to ask. Okay. All right. Good. Matthew chapter 25. Grab your outline. Let's go through this. Malachi chapter 3. Boy, y'all getting about tired of me talking about Malachi. Malachi chapter 3, verse 8 reads, you people are robbing me, your God. And here you keep on asking, how are we robbing you? I say you are robbing me of the offerings and the 10% that belongs to me. That's the CEV translation. This verse records what the Lord accused the children of Israel of in the Old Testament. No blood-bought saint should ever want to be guilty of taking from who? The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Whenever believers rob God with their finances, highlight this. Whenever believers rob God with their finances, the biggest robbery that takes place is with themselves. It's with themselves, which means when you rob God, you're really hurting who? Hurting yourself. This lesson is designed to share what believers can do to rob themselves of financial increase. What believers can do to rob themselves of financial increase. And I want to look at Matthew chapter number 25, verses 14 through 30. 14 through 30. I would, in your time of devotion, your moments of meditation, your private moments with God, I would that you would read all of Matthew chapter 25, all of it. Today we're covering 14 through 30, but there are really 46 verses in the chapter. And when you read the chapter, it's really three different stories. The first story is in verses 1 through 13. The second story is in verses 14 through 30. And then the third story is 31 through 46. First story is 1 through 13. And that's when he talks about those who were wise and those who were foolish. He talks about the people that had oil in the lamp and those that did not have oil in the lamp. And then the second story, 14 through 30, is the one we will cover today. It's the story where one person gives possessions to three different people. One person gives possessions to three different people, and then we get a chance to see how they maneuvered with the possessions. And then the last story, he talks about judgment times. He says when either you will discover you are a sheep or you are a goat. You are a sheep or you are a goat. He said he's going to put one group on one side and another group on another side. And he's going to say to one group, you were there. And he's going to say to another group, you were not there. And that the people was going to say, well, when weren't we there? He said, well, when I was sick, you came to visit me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. When I was out without clothes, you put clothes on my back. And he said, they're going to say, well, when did we ever see you like that? And he says, when you do it to the least of these, you've done it to me. You've done it to me. So it's 1 through 13, 14 through 30, and then 31 through 46. Let me label each section for you. Let me label each section for you. We'll cover 14 through 30, but let me label the other sections for you. Would you make note that verses 1 through 13 deals with readiness? Readiness. I don't know from there. Readiness. Ready. What's REA? What REA? DINESS. Readiness. He deals with readiness because he's talking about people being prepared and ready when the Lord comes. Always be on the lookout for the Lord's return. So he's dealing with readiness. That's 1 through 13. 14 through 30, will you make a note that he's dealing with resources? Resources. I wasn't sure whether to label 14 through 30 resources or responsibility. After we finish this lesson 14 through 30, you let me know whether you think it should be more resources or whether you think it should be responsibility. I'm calling it resources right now. And if after this lesson we go through it that you think it's more responsibility, then when you teach this lesson, that's what I want you to label it. Okay? We do it your way. That's right, you do it your way. All right, 1 through 13 deals with what? Readiness. 14 through 30 deals with what? Resources. And then finally, 31 through 46 deals with rewards. Today we're going to focus on the resources. And I want to walk you through it. Grab your outline. Let me give you the answers for the breakdown. Number 1, you discover the generosity to the servants. There are 3 servants in verses 14 through 30, and they all receive because of one man's generosity. Verses 16 through 18, the mentality of the servants. What is their mindset? And then finally, 19 through 30, which is the longest part of this, the accountability for the servants. The accountability. In verses 19 through 30, you discover they are being held accountable for the generosity that they received and their mentality as it related to what was given to them. And I want to walk you through it. It shouldn't take us long because this is a familiar passage of Scripture. I want to read it out of Living Bible. Living Bible. Let's begin with verse 14. Mary, if you can put verse 14 on the screen. Notice what it says. Again, the kingdom of heaven. Because Matthew starts off verse 1 telling a parable, telling a story, giving an illustration. So in verse number 14, he says again, which means this is the second time. He says again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going into another country who called together his what? His servants. This man called together his servants and he loaned them money to invest for him while he was gone. That's what the Living Bible says. He loaned them money or he gave them money. Most translations say he just gave them money and he never really told them what to do with it, but he gave them money. All right. And then here's what verse 15 says. He gave 5,000 to one. He gave 2,000 to another and he gave 1,000 to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities, and then he left for his trip. So he gave to them based off of what he knew they could handle. King James says he gave one 5, he gave one 2, he gave one 1. The King James says he gave them all talents. Modern translations say he gave them all money, because when the Bible talks about talents, the Bible is always talking about money. Many times when we're talking about talents, we're talking about gifts, we're talking about skills, we're talking about abilities. But in the Bible, a talent was always money. And it is said that one talent in those days, what this man gave, one talent was equivalent to 20 years' wages. 20 years' wages. And I want you to think about your yearly wage right now. Your yearly wage right now. And if you had received 5 talents, that would be equivalent to what? 20 times 5 is what? Is that 100? That's 100 years of wages. 100 years of wages. If you had been given 2 talents, that's what? No. 20 times 2. Okay, 40. And then if you had received 1 talent, what? 20 years. 20 years. Ask somebody on your roll, let me have half a talent from you. Let me have half a talent. You ain't got to give me a whole talent. Just give me. Can you imagine? Can you imagine somebody breaking off for you 20 years worth of wages? You talking about plenty. 20 years worth of, just out of the goodness of their heart. I went to a gas station today to get a little gas, and I didn't have my wallet with me to get it at the pump, so I just said I'll just pay cash for it, and I had $40 in my pocket, and just said I'll just put $40 in, and I saw a guy in the store, and he said, "Hey, Pastor," he said, "how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing pretty good," and I let him go before me, and then he said, "Come on, Pastor." He said, "Come on, Pastor, you go." I said, "No, you go. And then he said, I had a bottle of water too. So what I was going to do was pay for the water and get the rest gas. And he saw me with the water, and he said to the person at QT, he said, "Put that on my bill." I said, "I'm getting gas too." I want him to know, come on. Marvin, you just said you have not because you asked not, right? And he said, "How much gas were you getting?" I said, $50. No. I told him 40. He said, "Put it on my bill. Put it on my bill." I said to him, "I wish I'd have had both my cars." Because isn't it amazing, no matter what people do for us, we always want. Let somebody know that's why I can't hook you up with nothing. You always want more. Okay. All right. So he gives 1 5, he gives 1 2, he gives 1 1. The Living Bible said he gave 1 5,000, he gave 1 2,000, he gave 1,000. Now here's what I want you to see, that he gave this to them out of the goodness of his heart. They did not do anything to earn this. And this man is a picture of Christ. This man is a picture of the Lord. And we are a picture of the servants. And everything that God has given to us, we have not earned what? Any of it. All right. Thank you, Mary. Take me to the next verse. The man who received 5,000, watch their mentality. The man who received 5,000 began immediately to do what? Buy and sell with it. And soon he had earned another 5,000, which means he doubled it. Did anybody tell him to do this? No, he did this on his own. The man with 2,000 went right to work too, and he earned another 2,000. Watch this. Tell somebody next to you, we're about to get to you now. We about to get to you today. All right. But the man who received the 1,000 dug what? A hole in the ground and hid the money for safekeeping. You see the mentality of the three of them? Two of them were what? Were investors. I like that. Proactives. Okay. And one of them was what? One of them was lazy. One of them decided not to do it. The one who was afraid. He was afraid, scared. Okay. Isn't it amazing that the one that had the less did the least? Because the text said he gave to them according to their ability, which suggests that the one who had one, if he had been given 5, he would have messed up all 5. And the one who had 5, if he had been given 1, it wouldn't have been enough for him. All right, so watch the accountability. Watch the accountability. All right, here we go. After a long time, their master returned. After a long time, their master returned from his trip. Notice he never told them when he was coming back. After a long time, he returned, and he called them in to what? To do what? To account. See why I call it accountability? To account for the money that he gave to them. The man whom he had entrusted the 5,000 brought him 10,000. His master praised him for good work. He said, "You've been faithful in handling this small amount," he told them. "So now I'll give you what? Many more responsibilities. Begin the joyous task I've assigned to you." Next came the man who had received 2,000 with the report, "Sir, you gave me 2,000 to use, and I've doubled it." "Good work," the master said. "You're a good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, the small amount, so now I'll give you much." King James says, he said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I'm going to make you ruler over many." Then the man with 1,000 came and said, "Sir, I knew you were a hard man, and I was afraid." Now, here's why I chose the Living Bible, because the Living Bible makes this statement, Pastor Miller, that no other translations make. Look what he says. "I was afraid you would rob me of what I earned, so I hid your money in the earth, and here it is." Don't miss this, Lord. He says, "I was afraid you would rob me of what I earned." Now, other translations say that he said this: "I know you are a hard man, and I know you reap where you haven't sown." That's what most translations say. You reap where you have not sown. I love the Living Bible here. He said, "Because you would have robbed me of what I earned." In other words, he's saying this: I felt like if I would have gotten extra, you would have taken it from me. You reap. He said, you reap what you haven't sown. Now, here's the big mistake he made. He thinks it's his. Now, Mary, go back to that verse, Mary. Go back to the beginning of that verse. Go back to the verse. The man with 1,000 came and says, "Sir, I knew you were a hard man." In other words, he starts off saying, based off of what I know about you, these are the decisions that I made. But what he perceived about him was wrong. He says, "I know you are a hard man. You reap where you haven't sown." But he gave it to you. It wasn't like you gave it to him and then he gave it back to you. It was his in the beginning. And he says, "And I felt like if I would have made extra, you would have taken it from me." Selfish. You're right. But he says, "But here's the one I got. But the master replied, 'Wicked man, lazy slave.'" Come on, give me the words you would have said, because your words would have been a little stronger. These are light words for some of you. The master said, "Wicked man, lazy man, since you knew I would demand your profit, you should have at least what? Put my money into the bank so I could have had some interest." he uses his excuse to show him it don't make sense. He says, because if you really knew what you said you know about me, it should have driven you to do something. I'm ready, Mary. Flip it. Look at what he says. Take the money from this man and give it to the man with 10,000. For the man who uses well what he has given shall what? Be given more. And he shall have abundance. That's plenty. Should have abundance. But the man who is what? Unfaithful, even what little responsibility he has shall be taken from him. 30. And throw the useless servant out into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping, gnashing of teeth, and coronavirus. Come on. Come on. I'm just trying to help you loosen up a little. Could you see how we could have called this a story about responsibility instead of resources? Which one would you use? Which one would you use? Responsibility or resources? How many of you would use resources? Resources. How many of you would use responsibility? Responsibility. Okay. Well, you use that when you... Where my people use resources. All right, I'm taking all y'all to lunch because you see it the way the pastor sees it, okay? First lady, which one you said you would have used? All right. Oh, what I got, smart, okay. All right, grab your outline. What messed this man up? Fear messed him up. Laziness messed him up. Lack of skills. Irresponsible. Overthinking. Ooh, that's good. Stupidity. Okay. All right. Did he rob himself of increase? Did the other two get increase? And how did they get increase? By using what they had. Okay. All right. He did none of that. Okay, good. Let me give you the answers. Get answers. Number one, you can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of verboseness. Teach it all, Pastor. Verboseness. Tell somebody, don't be so verbose. Mary put the definition up because they grabbing their phone. Go ahead, put the definition up. Look what it is. An expressive style that uses excessive or empty words. In other words, talking too much. And ain't saying nothing. Anybody know some verbose people? Just talking and ain't saying. Anybody, you are the verbose person. Watch this. When you look at the three men that came in, the one that did the least talked the most. Verse 24 and 25, he goes on and on and on and on. Could God be trying to teach us that people who do little talk much? And when you do a lot, your work will speak for you. Let the works that I've done speak for me. Verse 24 and 25. He's very verbose. He's talkative. He's very loquacious. Talkative. Y'all, I've been busy this week. I've been studying and washing my hands. Amen. Number two, you can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of stinginess. When you look at verse 25, read verse 25 to somebody next to you and tell me if you see stinginess in there. Stinginess in there. Stinginess. Tracy, you said something early and I see that in there. That could have easily been. I see selfishness in there. You see selfishness. Because look at how many times he says in verse 24 and 25, do you see stinginess at all? What does he accuse God of? He says to the God that gave to him, he says, I felt like if I had got more. And he did not want to give to the one who had given to him. I mean, you figure if somebody gives you 20 years worth of wages and then you double it, even if you give them back one of the talents, you still got 20 years worth of stench. All he saw was himself. And how many times? He had lack of faith. Lack of faith. Lack of faith. Mm-hmm. That's what you said? Okay, all right. Give you big ups for that. You said, okay. So number one, you can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of what? Verboseness. Number two, you can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of? Here's number two. You can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of evilness. You see it, it's bold on your paper. But his master replied and said what? Wicked man. Evilness, wickedness. Just eat. And I don't think intentionally he was evil. I just think it just showed up as a result of what was given to him. I think there's some people you don't start the day planning on being evil. If you do, raise your hand. Come on up here for prayer. But it just shows up as a result. And there's some people, watch this, the more blessed they are, you would think the more kind they would be. But there's some individuals, the more they get, the more they obtain, the worse they become. Evil. He said, you're wicked. You're wicked. You know what he's saying? His heart is not right. His heart. Now, why wasn't his heart right? Because all he was thinking about was who? All was he thinking about was himself. And then number 4, turn your paper over. You can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of laziness. But his master replied, not only are you wicked, but what? You're lazy. You're lazy. You're lazy. Notice he started out as a servant. Now he's called a slave. The other two started off as servants and they end up as rulers. Do you see where he was lazy? How do you see where he was lazy? He didn't do anything. Watch this. He worked harder to bury it. Boy, y'all ain't paying attention today. Because when you bury something, what's the first thing you got to do? You got to dig. He worked harder to bury it than they did to invest it. Sometimes you want to ask people who are in jail, who are in prison, you're working harder for free, for less than you could being free. Laziness. And then let me give you the last one. Tell somebody, I'm enjoying this lesson. Look at somebody, say, this is a word for the times. A word for the times. All right, here the last one, here the last one, here the last one, here the last one. Number 5. You can rob yourself of financial increase as a result of unfaithfulness. Now look at this verse, 27 through 29. He said, you should have at least put my money in the bank so I could have had some interest. Take the money from this man and give it to the man with 10,000. Verse 29 is what I really want you to see here. For the man who uses well what he is given shall be given more, and he shall have abundance. But the man who is, highlight this, unfaithful, even what little responsibility he has shall be taken from him. Now catch this, Peggy. The difference between the 3 guys is the first 2 were faithful and the last one was unfaithful. And he was unfaithful because he didn't do anything. Now here's what I want you to grab from this lesson before we go. God is not concerned about amounts. God is concerned about faithfulness. It's not the amount. It's the faithfulness. And look what he said about the first 2. You've been faithful over a few things. I'm going to make you rule. And look what he says to the other one. You have been unfaithful. Unfaithful. And he lost what he had. Mary, take me all the way to verse 25. Take me all the way to verse 25. Let me share with you one thing that paralyzed this man. Paralyzed this man. He was unfaithful. The other 2 were faithful. Verse 25 in Matthew 25. In Matthew 25. Look at what it says right there. Go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning of verse number 25. Yeah, there it is right there. Look what he says. And I was afraid. What messed him up? Fear. I was afraid. I was afraid. He was paralyzed by fear. And when you're paralyzed by fear, you will come up with all kinds of excuses to keep you from doing what you're supposed to do when you're paralyzed by fear. Let me show you the extent of your excuses when you're paralyzed by fear. Mary, put up Proverbs, is it 22:13? 22:13? Put up 22:13. I want to close with this. Look what it says. You got to get this. This is the CEV translation. Look what it says. Don't be so lazy that you say, if I go out to work, a lion will eat me. You talking about being paralyzed by fear. Is that a good verse or what? Come on, take your camera out and take a picture of that. Take a picture of that. You got to send that to somebody. Some of y'all got grown children you're still taking care of. Send that to them, right? Don't be so lazy that you say, if I go out to work, a lion's going to eat me. I got one more translation. That's a CV. That's a CV. That's a CV. That's a CV. CV. Y'all done? Y'all got it? Y'all got it? Miss Sarah, you got yours? You got yours? You got yours? All right. All right. Ray, you got yours? You got yours? Okay. 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 All right. All right. All right. Mary, put it up. What is it? NLT? Is it NLT the second one I have? Look what it says. The lazy person claims there's a lion out there. And if I go outside, I might be killed. Because this teaches us when you don't want to do something, when you're paralyzed by fear, you can come up with any excuse to justify what you don't want to do. You'll go to the extent that says, I can't go outside. I can't fill out an application today because a lion is out. I can't go online and submit nothing today because a lion may jump out of the screen and just fear. You become like the man who went to his neighbor and said, can I borrow your lawnmower tomorrow? And his neighbor told him, he said, yeah. He said, you can borrow my lawnmower tomorrow if my wife is not cooking greens. And the guy say, what does your wife cooking greens have to do with me borrowing the lawnmower? He said, nothing, but any excuse is better than nothing. And have you ever met some people, all they have are excuses. All they have is excuses. There was a basketball coach who used to start every season saying this: winning starts with beginning. Winning starts with beginning. You know what he was saying? You'll never win. And here was his second statement. What was his first statement? Winning starts. Watch his second statement, so excuses will stop you from beginning. Winning starts with beginning, but excuses will stop. And how many times have we said we was going to start doing something better, but excuses have crept up? And many times it's those same excuses that have hindered us from financial increase. And I want to say to you today, don't rob yourself of financial increase. Don't be guilty of doing more talking than walking. More lip service than life service. Verboseness. What was number two? What was number two? What was number two? What was number two? Stinginess. Quit thinking it's yours. If God had never given it to you, you wouldn't have it in the first place. And whatever God has given you once, he can give it to you again. When God asks for it, he's not asking from it because he's trying to take it from you. He wants to know, can you trust him? And then number three is what? Number three is what? Evilness. Evilness. Always checking where you are in your heart. What are your motives? You can do the right thing for the wrong reason and lose your blessing. And then number four is laziness. Why can't you go out? Why can't you go out to Bible study? Why you can't come out to church? There's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. A lot out there. Tell somebody I was going to take you to your favorite restaurant, but it's lions all over. And then don't be guilty of unfaithfulness. That's all about time. Thanks for your time. You've just been listening to a word for the time. Stand to your feet across the building. Nod at a couple of people. Tell them, be faithful, 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 be faithful. Live your life where at your last days you can say, I fought a good fight. I finished my course. And I kept the faith. Christ can help you. Can't do this on your own. Christ can help you. Here today, never accepted Christ, want to do it today. It's a great opportunity to do it. Want a church home, want to be around a group of faithful people, want to learn what it means to operate in faith. We would love to have you as a member of Berean today. That's your choice. That's your decision. Or if you desire to make changes, be held accountable. We never take for granted because we in church. We all got the right relationship with the Lord, with the church, or with ourselves. Want to make a decision today? Lift your hands. Lift your hands. Want to make a decision today? Or you can walk and meet me up front today. What do we believe here with all of our heart? It's ours to extend and yours to accept. Grab your seats. Share with somebody how glad you are to be sitting by them today. How glad you are. I'm glad to be sitting next to you. I'm glad. Let's prepare to bless God with our tithes and our offering. Don't